how to create a social media strategy. And what is a social media strategy exactly? In this video, I'm walking you through the step-by-step process on how to create a social media strategy. And this will apply whether you work as a freelance social media manager or as a social media manager for a bigger company. I'm also sharing you how you can use that social media strategy and generate some extra income. But before we dive in, two very important things. First of all, you might hear some background noises because I have just arrived in Italy and we are above the most crowded street. So you'll hear people yelling for vegetables and fruits and tourists walking around with their suitcases. But that's part of why I love living in different countries. The second part, if you are new to this channel, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me create more videos for you guys. Right, let's dive in right now. So what is a social media strategy exactly? Basically, it is a roadmap where you show clients how you help them achieve their goal through social media. So they will share with you their marketing goal, and I'm going to show you how you can find out what their marketing goal is. Once you know that, you will generate a roadmap for them on how they can achieve that. What platform should they be on? What kind of content should they be posting in order to achieve that goal? So if you are working as a social media manager for a freelance client and you'll do that for them on a monthly basis, what I do, I actually don't show them the strategy on a nice PDF. I talk them through it on a call. And you can do that after you had the initial discovery call, they signed a contract, you're doing an audit. Again, I'm going to show you in a minute how to do that. And then on the first kickoff call, basically, you're walking them through the strategy. And now here is a second tip on what you could do if someone doesn't have the budget to work with you on a monthly basis. You could offer them to create a social media strategy and then sell just the strategy. So basically just the PDF. That's one way. The second way is you offer the social media strategy and a full hour, like a power hour call with it. You can sell that as well. Because really when someone reads a document and has not a lot of ideas about social media, then maybe questions might come up. So then they could discuss that with you on the call. But in the end, they will have to execute everything on their own. But for you, it's really helpful because you can generate that extra income. And if you stay within one niche, then it won't be as much work, because once you've generated a strategy for one client, you don't have to do the full blast research for all the new clients. If you don't have a niche yet, make sure that you watch my video about how to find your niche. All right, so now step number one, you want to create a social media strategy for your client. You first need to know what is their actual goal. What do they want to achieve? And I can tell you right now, things that you will hear is, oh, we want to just generate more followers, or we want to grow more, or generally more income would also be great. That's not specific enough, right? When we come to the income part and they have ideas about that, we can take it from there and discuss what are exact numbers. But when they say stuff about, oh, I want more followers, that's usually a red flag for me. Why do you want more followers? So if you're an influencer and you are depending on how many followers you have because you want to work with brands, I understand that you need more followers. However, as a brand, do you want to have more income? Then we don't necessarily need that many more followers. We can generate income on different ways through our socials, what we already have. And then we also want to look at how is the engagement currently, how is the content currently. We want to look at overall and what they're already doing and why they actually think that they need more followers. So these are super important things that you guys want to watch out before you even start with your clients. And then I'll send them a little survey. So you can do that on the phone as well, but actually I like them to sit down there on their own and really think about it. And you're going to ask them things like, of course, what is their marketing goal, but also what are your current struggles when it comes to social media marketing? And what have you already tried? What has worked? What hasn't worked? Really force them on thinking about what they are actually doing on their socials, or are they just randomly putting out any content, like throwing spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks? Now, let's say you have a product-based business and they are selling a product for $49. If they say we want more sales, I want to be super specific, like how many more sales, like how many more units do you want to sell, or how much more revenue do you want us to generate through our social media marketing. And then another question you're going to ask them right away is, what's your budget for paid advertising or influencer marketing? So if someone says that they want to sell more products right away, as in like fast, we need to do paid advertising. Yes, we can post organically on social media, but if you have a certain number in mind, most likely you won't get it in a very good time frame doing organic social media management. Don't get me wrong, we still want to do social media organic management, but we also want to look on paid advertising like Facebook or Instagram ads, or maybe they have a budget for influencer marketing. These are all things to consider. If you work with a service-based business, on the other hand, and someone offers coaching, for example, let's say a health coach, and she launches a new program, how many more signups does she want to generate? And then you also want to ask, well, what have you done? That loops back to my first question, what have you already tried? What have you done in the past to generate signups? How big is your email list, if you have any? So these are things that you want to know before you do your initial research and create your content, because you want to know what's going on in the back end. So what's the process after, and what have they already tried? Maybe we want to try something different. Or maybe they just didn't realize that it actually was going really well and we should put more money behind it, for example. So this is usually a big example when people come to the first few times to Facebook and Instagram ads and they feel like, oh, I've put in money, I got some sales back, but it's not enough. Well, maybe we didn't put in enough money in the first place. So these are all things that you want to look at. And talking about Facebook and Instagram ads, they can give you analytics access so that you can go into their backend in Facebook Business Manager and you can check out what they've already been doing and what has worked and what hasn't worked. I recently just did that as a workshop for a company. You can watch my blog. It's called The Day in the Life of a Social Media Manager. And I really went into their Facebook Business Manager and I looked at what has been performing well and what hasn't been performing well. And it turned out that they didn't understand their numbers. They had no idea what their KPIs were. What is a good click-through rate? What is a good conversion rate? They didn't really know that. If you don't know what numbers you should achieve, then again, really your marketing is not going in any direction because you don't even know what the direction is, right? So these are all things that you do in a very initial first step on the questionnaire. Then a big part of that questionnaire is going to be about their client avatar. Now, in the past, when I do social media strategy for bigger companies, I just tell them to link their client avatar document because a bigger, more established company usually has that already written out. This is going to be my second red flag if someone does not have a client avatar. Really, if you don't know who you're selling to or who you're talking to, how you expect me to create content, then I would probably talk to them on a phone call and see if we can figure it out together. Maybe they have it in their head, but it's not on paper. Or really, I also had to retreat basically from a client work if someone doesn't know what they want to sell to who they want to sell it and constantly change their mind. You can do your best effort and it won't get any results. So they need to have their client avatar figured out. That means not just gender and age. I want to also have super specific information on what do they like, where do they shop, what keeps them up at night, really a very in-depth research about their clients in order for me to create then great content for them. Now, of course, I will do my own research, and that's going to be step 2, but it helps that I can already check out their document and see how far they are. Now, I just quickly touched on the follow-up process when I was explaining this whole thing about client's avatar. And the one thing that happened to me in the past that I really want you to watch out for is asking your client what their follow-up process is once you have generated leads for them. Whether you do paid advertising or organic marketing, you will create more engagement, you will get more followers to them, and then what? Once you did that initial marketing and more eyeballs on your clients' products and services, what are they going to do? Let's say you run ads for them and you get them people on their email list. What's the follow-up process for them? Do they have a nurture email sequence in place? Once they come to a Facebook group, do they have a follow-up process there to really capture the lead? And if they don't have that, you can do your best effort, but you won't turn a follower into a client, and that's usually their goal. Right, now you have your client questionnaire back and you see what information you already got. Now you're going to do your own research. Now you can see where you need to put in a little bit more work, how in-depth is their client avatar research really. And I'm sharing with you one of my favorite websites. Actually, 2 of my favorite websites. One of them is called Spark Toro and the other one is called Answer the Public. And really with these 2, you can do free research. As you can see here, you can enter a keyword and then it will give you more information about either a keyword or about someone's website. You can enter competitor websites on here as well. Super helpful. And I want you to do that research in order to get an even bigger picture on their client's avatar. Then you also want to do competitor research. You want to check out their biggest competitor and see what they are doing. I always ask that in my questionnaire. Name 3 of your biggest competitors. I'm going to check them out. I'm going to research what they're doing. And I'm going to check out their paid ads. So I'm going to check out what kind of Facebook and Instagram ads are they running and how long are they running? Because if they're running for a long time, usually they are performing pretty well. So can we adopt anything from that? So these are the first few initial steps. There's a lot of behind the scene work, as you can see, before even the very first post goes out. Now that I know everything about my client and about my client's client, I can actually think of creating content. But before I do that, I want to think of the platforms we should be on. Should they be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, you name it, and so many more options. But we want to look at their client avatar and think of where would they hang out. So if it's a 65-year-old man who shops locally, he might not be the right one to reach on TikTok, right? So you want to look, or maybe he is. So you want to look at the client's behaviors, you want to look at the demographics, you want to also look at the competitors and think of like, okay, where should we be on? And I can see a lot of the times clients come to me and say to me, I want to be on these 4 platforms, and I'll do the research and I realize, well, only you should be on these 3 platforms, or we could add one, we can remove one. So really that's the main part of the strategy. Now that you did all these research, deciding on what platforms you should be on or your clients should be on. And then the very last step is obviously come up with content for that client. Now, I'm not talking about already creating an Instagram feed and posts, etc. You want to have a general overview and what kind of content are you going to create. And that is more like the path to start with. Because then after 1 or 2 months, you're going to look at the data and realize, okay, this has actually performed really well. We're going to continue doing this. or actually we don't need to do this anymore. So for example, I might try with one client, okay, let's post quotes. Let's see how those quotes perform on Instagram. And we might get a lot of reshares and saves and generally more reach. And then we'll try it with another client and it doesn't work. Even if they're in a completely same niche, some people just don't resonate with it. That's okay. So then we try a different strategy. But we're creating an overall strategy first. We decide what kind of numbers we want to look at in order to define what works and what doesn't work. And then we're looking at the numbers obviously regularly, but after 1 or 2 months, sometimes even 3, we can actually see, okay, this is working and this is not working. Now with Facebook or Instagram ads, you can make these decisions way faster because you have way more data way faster. So you're gonna write, okay, maybe we're posting 3 times per week a video on Facebook. The video is generally going to be about these 5 topics, or we create 1 Instagram live per week about an educational topic. We're going 3 times on stories. We're posting 1 or 2 times on Instagram. We're posting 5 times per day on TikTok. And this is how we're going to get the content. So this is the overall strategy. As you can see, this is a full roadmap on how we're going to go from A to B, and the roadmap in between is really that strategy. And maybe in between we realize it's a dead end and we have to adapt. That's fine too, but we want to have an overall idea. All right, before we come to the last step, I would love for you if you give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel. The last step is going to be creating a nice little document in Canva where you can put in all your overall thoughts so that someone can look through and knows exactly what your plan is. Again, I only do that if I sell this strategy by itself. For me, I just keep notes in a Google Doc. I hop on a call with the client, usually a 1-hour kickoff call. I walk them through the strategy and I tell them we're now creating content for this specific strategy. And then on our next call, a month later, because I do monthly calls with my clients, I will inform them on what worked and what hasn't worked. Let me know if you have any questions about social media strategy or social media management in general. I also have a free masterclass where you can learn how to get started. Make sure to check it out. The links are all below. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.